more of a gut feel approach to recruitment than a more objective, data-driven approach.
Times will have to change and we'll have to change. There's a lot of change across the industry. Though we had gut feel, there are a lot of failures there. Sometimes our gut feel might fail. We are trying to finalize on certain tools where we could integrate with our applicant tracking systems, whereas the whole process is automated and even the recruiter's time doesn't waste much.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes they might miss the right candidate.
Exactly.
And their mood might not be the same when they are dealing with the first candidate and the
versus the
500th
candidate. Yeah.
So we doesn't want all that impacting while sourcing the right candidates for us.
For example, a manager or a VP is talking to a candidate for an hour. I mean, that's if they've come that far and the quality is not good, then that's a big problem. So you'd rather want to eliminate all that quality issues up front.
See, we did try a lot of tools, but we didn't finalize on anything. We kept trying, but not many are very promising.
So you would rather want to have them do this interview at their own time, at their own convenience. They wanted to do it at 12 o'clock in the night. They should be able to do it at 12 o'clock in the night. And then that way, it also not only helps you as a recruiter, but also sort of helps the candidate as well, because that's when they're available.
He might be the right candidate. End of the day, I mean, after all the preliminary screening, and recruiter doesn't have any choice. But your rapport is already damaged, right? That's actually the recruiter's job, I would say, more than asking the regular mundane questions, right?
And I think using AI, be able to at least get 80% of the work done through that. And then maybe all you need to do is do the remaining 20%.
Thinking is totally different. I mean, the founder, CEOs, any senior managers, they start looking at how much am I investing, how much am I going to get in return.
Welcome, everyone, to our latest podcast. My name is Sreedhar Tatavarthi. I'm the VP of Business Development at Aikam, where we are on a mission to transform recruiting. And today's topic is how companies are going from more of a gut feel hiring to a data-driven hiring. And to discuss that today, we have industry stalwart who has had a couple of decades of experience in HR, Mr. Giri Prasad Reddy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Maybe if you could give us, a quick intro about yourself, then we'll get started into the rest of the topic.
Sure. So, 2011 is when I joined CGS, more of business development, delivery into recruitment. Before that, I had always been into recruitment is what I did. I mean, in terms of being an individual contributor as a recruiter. Then that's when I got this opportunity with CGS, and I was challenged with a lot of variety of works there. I would say, starting from your recruitment, business development, eventually into HR. And I was also involved into some sort of administration there. So kind of I was involved into everything at CGS, but then I'll have to be focused at one point of time when we start growing. We were around 36 people there. Now we are close to 700 people here in India. Otherwise, globally, we are about 8,000. So that's how I had grown from a basic recruiter to a head of HR here at CGS, and I want to share my experiences with you.
That is fascinating. So we'd love to dig in on that and pick your brains on the topic at hand today. So one of the things I've read recently is that this is according to the SRM report, SHRM report, that said that about 44% of recruiters today depend on more of a gut feel approach to recruitment than a more objective, data-driven approach. So I was wondering, from your perspective, when you hear something like that, what do you think is wrong with that? And what are you, or in general, the the industry and the leaders you talk to are doing to address some of that?
No, gut feel is always there with the senior recruiters, I would say. I mean, obviously, they had been hiring for quite some time, and they'll obviously have some sort of a gut feel that I can hire so and so person within this time. But then times will have to change, and we'll have to change. There's a lot of change across the industry. Though we had gut feel, there are a lot of failures there. Sometimes our gut feel might fail. So that's the reason things are changing towards data-driven recruitment than the gut feel. I think that's something everyone will have to realize, and that too AI coming into picture, right? So earlier when we were looking at resumes, those were real resumes, but now it's all AI formulated resumes, and with the gut feel, I don't think so we can really judge such kind of resumes, and we'll have to obviously try to be little inclined towards technology along with some sort of a data. That's when our gut feel will increase with the we getting enabled towards technology. Otherwise, just the gut feel might not help, is what I feel at this point of time.
That's perfect. So I've heard this thing called this term that the resumes are dead. And I guess it reflects on the point that you just made earlier,
correct.
that all resumes are AI anyway right now.
It's all
so
same.
it's all the same. Every resume looks like just the next one, right? So I'm curious. Are there certain things that you're doing right now to make that, to address that problem, to address that particular issue where everything looks the same and it sort of blends together now? Are there certain approaches you're taking to address that?
Yes. See, earlier we were taking resumes too seriously, but now for the sake of data is what we collect the resumes for the sake of process and data. That's obviously we have some sort of contact information, at least some truth about their educational qualification, their experience, tenures. Those details are still valid there. But when it comes to roles and responsibilities, that's when what we try to do is we try and talk to the candidates more and more than just look into the resume, just ask them for the CTC details or other basic details and go ahead and schedule. That's where we are seeing a lot of failure. So instead, we wanted to talk to them more in detail about what kind of projects they did, what were they doing, I mean, what was the functionality of that particular product or application which they were developing. Until unless they give us more relevant answers, then I don't think so we should consider them as relevant resumes. That's something we started training our recruiters, and recruiters started getting in more inputs from our technical panel, that these are the questions you'll have to ask, and if these guys are answering them very well on phone or probably on video, sometimes even phones are a little tricky. I mean, we are not very sure if that's the same candidate who's speaking with us. So that's the reason we try to pull them onto a video call, and that's where we question them. And sometimes that also a little tricky, and we call them for face-to-face discussions. So now that's something we are a little inclined towards than just believing in a text resume. So we wanted to talk to the candidates, we wanted to understand more from them directly than looking at the resume and deciding on them.
That makes sense. So I'm assuming that this happens sort of in the first round when you're screening them.
Correct.
That this conversation about, hey, tell me about your experience. What have you done? What are your roles? What exactly have you delivered? What was the thing that you worked on specifically?
Correct.
I'm assuming that those are the things that you normally look for. In fact, that's what I do. Like, I just came out of an interview today. Like, I was trying to grill into that as well. So I'm curious, if your recruiters were to do this, especially at the volumes that you hire. For example, you said you almost have 700 people. So what kind of burden does this put on them? And what are you doing to address that? Like, are there technologies you're using right now? Are there technical solutions you're using right now to make it easier on your recruiters to do that? Maybe you can share some of your ideas or thoughts on that.
Correct. So especially when you're doing volume hiring, then this becomes very hectic for our recruiters, and especially from a company's image standpoint, right? I mean, if you can't handle them well, right? I mean, so if you just post a requirement and say you can walk in and you attend the interview, and there are 400-500 people walking into our office,
Right.
and we obviously, with the size of offices we have now,
Right.
and the real estate size, right? I mean, we might not be able to handle or manage them very well. That becomes a negative impact on us, right? Instead, what we started doing is we started conducting some sort of assessments right after they apply. We were earlier using some product which is more of showcasing our experience, how the work culture within our office would be. That's a little expensive tool, but we recently started using some sort of assessment tools which are slightly cheaper, but that was really good, but it was very expensive for us. So likewise, we have some tools like Versa and from Pearson or some other tools where we filter out candidates, right? I mean, much before we project them to the technical panel or to the operations team, especially in the call centers, where we say this guy's communication is very good. You need not check on the communication, but then you can check on the other aspects. It could be attitude, it could be whether he is willing to learn, all of that, right? So that has become a game changer, I would say, and we have no other choice when we are hiring at bulk numbers. We definitely should enable some sort of a technology. We should do some sort of an assessment,
Right.
without which I don't think so. What happens is, if you don't do the first level discussion in a right way, this will impact the other discussions,
The rest of the
discussions,
that makes
right?
sense.
And your impression on your team, I mean, the recruitment team or HR team changes totally,
Right.
right? I mean, if you do the first level screening very well,
Right.
then rest of the things will settle down very well.
Yes.
Right? That's something we started doing.
Yeah.
Probably we might have to go ahead and implement more structured approach than just trying to bring in this or that tool.
Right.
We are trying to finalize on certain tools where we could integrate with our applicant tracking systems, whereas the whole process is automated, and even the recruiter's time doesn't waste much.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for them also, if they wanted to filter out 400-500 candidates,
Right.
sometimes they might miss the right candidate.
Exactly.
And their mood might not be the same when they are dealing with the first candidate and the
Versus the
500th
500th candidate. Yeah.
So we doesn't want all that impacting while sourcing the right candidates for us. So that's where we are trying to leverage some sort of a technology or assessment tools.
Right.
So that's something we started doing.
Right. So I think you made a really good point, because that is something I see as well. That if the quality of screening the first round isn't good, then it wastes a lot of time and effort for a lot of other people, and that is much more costlier for the firm.
Correct.
Because if for example, a manager or a VP is talking to a candidate for an hour, I mean, if they've come that far and the quality is not good, then that's a big problem. So you'd rather want to eliminate all that quality issues up front, which is the cheapest way to do it. And then I think, like you said, use technologies, use the
There are a lot of tools available. It's
Right.
just that you'll have to pick and choose the right tool.
Right. So my question to you is, how do you see AI playing a role in the first level screening? Have you sort of done something in that area right now where you're employing AI, or are you considering that for the future? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
See, we did try a lot of tools, but we didn't finalize on anything. We kept trying, but not many are very promising. So, like, I mean, we started taking demos, we started taking demo tests, we tried testing it out. Some are pretty good, I would say, but we are not very sure to what extent can we leverage those
Correct, yeah.
tools.
Okay.
But otherwise, the regular assessment tools were slightly cheaper compared to these tools.
Correct.
Cost will also come into picture when we start leveraging AI.
Absolutely.
Right? AI is definitely not very cheap.
Right.
Right. Obviously, there's a lot of efforts behind it.
Right.
Now they are offering some freebies which we are trying to test.
Right.
But obviously, that's the future. I mean,
That is the future.
Especially, I don't say the whole recruitment process can be managed by AI, but
At least the first few.
level, definitely.
Yeah.
It's more of structured process.
Correct, yeah.
Which you can feed into any AI tool or module and model that will help us filter out a lot of candidates, because that's something you can speak out, tell the AI tool, that this is what I wanted to do, that can definitely filter out the right resumes and give it back to us.
Right.
Especially not in terms of text, I would say.
Right.
We might have to go a little above it and talk. Probably we might have to
have a voice
interaction with the AI tools.
Conversational
correct,
AI.
Correct.
Yeah.
At least from a communication standpoint or
Right.
basic understanding about the roles and responsibilities. That's something which we can feed in, and AI can so easily deliver it to the candidates, and candidates can also respond back to the AI.
Right.
And that's definitely something which would definitely click. And right. I would say that's the future. I mean, at least from a initial screening perspective, AI is definitely going to help and replace a lot of processes or people at the front line.
Right. Right. And then that would also allow recruiters to focus on more valuable things for your team, so that you're not stressing them out on doing the more mundane work, but rather have them focus on the more higher value things that would ultimately result in a much better efficiency throughout the process for you guys.
I mean, I also feel recruiters will stop thinking about the basics, about the process and all. They'll start thinking about how do I sell the company, how do I convince the candidate about this role, or how can I judge the candidate in a much better way. I mean, in which ways AI is already helping me in terms of communication skills or basic screening. I'll have to think beyond that is what recruiters will start doing.
Right. So I'm curious, in terms of, I've read a report that, 40% of the time that recruiters spend is sort of mostly wasted on scheduling that initial interview, trying to coordinate with them. And all this goes back to the discussion you had earlier that, that this initial screening is the most, the time where you want to make sure the quality is high. You want to make sure that you're able to get through it fast, so that you can have your recruiters focus on more high value things. I think the solutions that you're looking for should also be able to help recruiters in doing this conversational thing, and do it at any time that the candidate is available for. You don't need to have the candidate come attend at a particular time. Maybe the candidate is already working at an office right now, and they are not available or not able to take a time off to attend the interview. So you would rather want to have them do this interview at their own time, at their own convenience. They wanted to do it at 12 o'clock in the night. They should be able to do it at 12 o'clock in the night. And then that way, it also not only helps you as a recruiter, but also sort of helps the candidate as well, because that's when they're available.
Of course. I did went through some of these demos where a link is generated and sent it on their WhatsApp, and it's candidate's wish, where he'll have to just click on the link and the AI will start talking to him, and he'll have to respond back to some questions, and it gives us the result. And next day you can talk at convenient time of the candidate, right? The next level of discussion can happen anytime when the candidate is available. But for the preliminary discussion, it's candidate choice. Whenever he wants, it could be midnight, whenever he's available for 5-10 minutes time, he can talk on that particular link, and we get the response from the AI, and whether this candidate is rejected, shortlisted, whatever it is.
So I know you manage a large team. You manage a lot of recruitment for your company. So I'm curious, do you see any differences between how one recruiter does in terms of getting the good quality candidates versus other? Meaning, are there any differences in or inconsistencies in that first round evaluation? Maybe it's because of volume. Maybe it's because, like you said earlier, maybe it's because of volume. Maybe it's because of the recruiter, experience, or maybe it's because of the particular role that you're hiring for. Like, what kind of inconsistencies do you see, and what could be done to address those inconsistencies?
No, I think, the initial screening is it's all about the initial screening, where there shows a lot of difference. The first connect which these recruiters have at the right time That really matters, and that's when the conversation will start building between the candidate and the recruiter. If the first impression or the first conversation doesn't go well, right, probably it could be the mood of the recruiter, it could be the kind of assessment the recruiter didn't had, or probably recruiter didn't ask the right questions to the candidate, and candidate's impression goes in a different way. But then he might be the right candidate, end of the day, I mean, after all the preliminary screening, and recruiter doesn't have any choice. But your rapport is already damaged, right? That's actually the recruiter's job, I would say, more than asking the regular mundane questions, right? They'll have to start thinking a little in a different way, building some sort of a conversation, building some sort of rapport, trying to convince the candidate, and candidate should open up with the recruiters. That's the real change they'll have to bring in to their regular job, not just about asking for the CTC details or experience details. Right. That's the difference. Where when you look at some of my team members, some of them are like they just know recruitment is all about asking some questions and getting some answers. It's not. Some recruiters think it in a totally different way. They build some sort of a rapport
with them,
and the candidates are too close to them, and they share all those problems with them, whether they can join on that particular date, or are there any problems. They share the feedback about the interviews, all of that. If you go in a too structured manner with the candidate, candidate attends the interview, they might pass, fail, all of that, but you will not get the real answers, a real opinion about the company, real feedback about the whole process which went through. Right, I mean, that's where the difference is being shown. I mean, from a good recruiter and a bad recruiter. I don't say bad recruiter. The difference between the recruitment, right? I mean, that shows a lot of times. And that's what I tell my recruiters. This is what something you'll have to try and do. I mean, so AI is coming into our lives. If you start doing the same thing, like asking for the same details, AI can also do the same thing. What else can you do beyond AI? I started asking my team that start thinking, what else can you do beyond AI? That's when all of these discussions come. I'll build rapport. I'll talk to them in a much better way. Candidates opens up with them. I mean, they talk about the company, they talk about the role, they talk about the interview, they talk what they wanted, a much open way, right? I mean, so if you go in a very structured way, they'll say yes, no, and all of that stuff, and they accept the offer.
It's very programmatic, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that's where the difference shows.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think being able to ask those kind of insightful questions, looking at their resume, understanding what they've done previously and how that relates to the role, and asking the really insightful questions, I think is key, because that what ends up delivering the quality that you're looking for in that first round of interviews. And it's not easy. I mean, asking the right question is so much more difficult than answering that question. Because you need to really dig deep into that. And it's often hard for a recruiter to see that. It's often hard for them because of the volume. Sometimes it's just the sheer volume that you don't have the cognitive power to continue to do that all the way from the first interview to, let's say, the day's 24th interview that day, right? So it's hard to execute and apply the same cognitive power throughout the day and ask the very insightful questions, because each candidate is different. Every candidate is different. They're coming from a different background, and it is hard to continue to do that. And I think using AI to do some of that, be able to at least get 80% of the work done through that. And then maybe all you need to do is do the remaining 20% once sort of, it can't be the end all be all of all solutions, but definitely I think it can get you most of the way there. And then you can use the 20%. So I'm a big believer in that. I'm in like you said, using AI to help yourself, help the recruiters do a better job at what they're doing right now, and to remove that inconsistency. Because if you only have to focus on the 20%, I think that helps a lot on removing that inconsistency across the board, and also it can be for varied experiences. So I think that will sort of translate into better KPIs across the board for all
Of
recruiters,
course,
right?
of course.
To adding to that, I guess I wanted to ask you, do you have certain KPIs for your recruiters? Like, hey,
Of course.
and what do those KPIs look like right now? Maybe you can generalize a few things and share some KPIs and how they look like, and how are they changing with the new advent of the AI age of
Yes.
recruiting?
Yes.
How are those KPIs changing?
See, it's more about TAT. Again, within TAT, I mean, there are a lot of aspects. It could
Mm,
be sourcing to hiring. I mean, it could
mm,
be interview to hiring,
mm,
offer to joining. There are a lot of these aspects, I mean,
mm,
which we keep looking into, right? I mean, but when it comes to sourcing to hire,
mm,
right? I mean, there are a lot of steps in between,
mm,
right? There are, see, we are trying to create a funnel,
mm,
and there are certain bottlenecks at each step, right? I
mm,
mean, end of the day, those bottlenecks are those, I mean, which we'll have to try and resolve eventually.
mm,
For those reasons, we have certain metrics, right? I mean, at every stage of this funnel, we have metrics, and we look at those metrics, and we check, I mean, where are things going wrong, right? Obviously, when you start asking your recruiters about those metrics, they say, I have this problem, the interviewer is not responding properly, there's a lot of delay there, that's why this metric has been increasing, right? I mean, sometimes what happens is sourcing to interviewing, there's a lot of time being taken. It could be availability of the recruiter, I mean,
right,
availability of the panel. It could be panel keep moving the interviews, rescheduling the interviews, and
right.
that obviously causes a lot of delay. But someone who is at a hiring manager level, they keep pushing as what's happening here. I want the candidate to be on board tomorrow, day
Right.
after tomorrow.
Right.
But then if these kind of bottlenecks are like stopping us to hire faster, then those metrics will have to be tweaked, and we'll have to try and resolve certain metrics. So those KPIs are obviously certain things which we as management look into and try to resolve the problems. Yeah.
Got it. I think in all these things that you mentioned, various stages, if I were to ask you, okay, what's the one area that if you were able to fix it, would give you the greatest bang for the buck in this
No,
whole
I
process?
think the first sourcing thing is something which we can do much better job. When I say we, the whole industry can do much better job. I mean, obviously by considering some sort of a technology enablement in the process, right? I mean, that will really solve the problems, because everyone says first impression is the best impression. I mean, if you have the first level of sourcing, right candidates,
Yep.
right? I mean, and filters out
Yep.
the right candidates, and
Yep.
obviously the whole process would be seamless,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's something we'll have to really fix.
Right. Right. And I think, like we talked earlier, I mean, AI has the most
Yes,
most
AI can definitely do. Looking at the way it is evolving,
right.
AI can definitely help the first set of the problems.
Right. So, thinking about the whole process end to end, I'm curious what makes the difference between sort of a great hire versus an average hire that may or may not be successful in the company. What do you think that differentiates in from the perspective of recruitment?
And I would say, I mean, when you have a bad hair, I mean, it's direct impact on your business, right? I mean, that bites back
Right.
from top down, right? I mean, they start asking who hired this candidate, why this candidate came into the system,
Right.
All of those questions will start, and it goes down till the recruiter who shows the profile, right? So obviously, that's where, I mean, I always judge the recruiters or tell the recruiters sometime, right? I mean, so judging is always easy, but then inculcating some sort of a behavior within the recruiter is more important. I tell them, so don't just look at recruitment as a process. Recruitment is all about, you'll have to understand the organization very well. What kind of a culture do we have? What kind of requirements? What do they do? If until unless you understand all of this, and that's running behind when you're talking to the candidates, you'll ask the right questions. Once you ask the right questions, I mean, you obviously get some sort of answers, and you'll have to match whether this guy will fit in our environment, can do our work. That's something the, recruiters will have to get in there. If you are just looking at the process and just picking up the call, I mean, downloading a resume from some portal and talking to the candidate and asking them, this is the job, are you interested? And then comes what CTC is yours, what are your expectations? And this is like very basic process. Anyone can do it.
Right.
Whoever can speak good English can do all of this.
Right.
But when you talk about recruiter, I mean, it's more about understanding our organization, understanding the requirement, understanding the hiring manager, understanding what the whole team is doing, what kind of a product is this, and what is the culture within our organization. Can this candidate fit in? Can we accommodate this kind of candidates within this culture? That's something recruiters will have to start thinking. Once they start thinking in those terms, and obviously all the hires would be good hires.
Right.
So that's the difference we'll have to really make. And obviously, when you say impact on us, it's a direct impact on our business, and even the cost would increase. When you have a bad hire, you'll have to obviously replace them, and again redoing the same thing, and it's double the cost. So you'll have to be a little more cautious when you're hiring someone, so that it will not impact our business, impact the cost, and impact on the brand name of the recruiters. Right? All of this will come into place. Is what I feel.
That makes sense. So, I want to take us back to the KPI conversation for a quick second. One of the things I see, at least in my experience hiring, is there is a little bit of an agency problem, in the sense that recruiter is trying to represent the interests of the founder and the company.
Correct.
But they also have sort of metrics to, hey, you have to interview so many number of candidates today or this month, and sometimes that goes against the goal of the CEO, because what the recruiter might try to prioritize is volume, given his KPIs. His incentive is to churn as many people as he can for the interview. That way his numbers are met. Whereas the founder's objective is to, hey, I want to get good quality. So I'm curious, how have you seen that kind of issue? And if you have, like, how is it addressed in your perspective? How are you addressing it?
No, I think what a recruiter looks at or what a CEO or a founder looks at is totally different. Recruiter looks at how many profiles am I sourcing, where can I source them from, and how quicker can I close the position. That's something the recruiter would look at. But when it comes to a founder's or CEO's level or a management person, right, what they start thinking, I mean, how much impact can we bring in if we onboard this kind of resource? Right? Should we onboard a junior resource, senior resource, or what kind of a resource do I need to kind of bring in that kind of a business impact within the organization, right? So that's the thinking is totally different. I mean, the founder, CEOs, any senior managers, they start looking at how much am I investing, how much am I going to get in return, right? I mean, they think to that extent, and the quality of the resource, can they really understand our business problem, and they can they really solve. They look at that kind of an aspect, and they start looking at the candidate in those terms, right? Their questions will also be in those terms. But when it comes to the recruiter, it's more of basic, right? I mean, they wanted to get in there, close the position, get some sort of an appreciation. If at all there are some sort of incentive programs, they wanted to earn incentive. Their thinking is in that terms.
Right.
That's why I said, I mean, so we were discussing earlier, the recruiters will have to start thinking in a totally different way, whether the candidate will fit in our requirement, whether they can really deliver the work what other developers within our organizations are able to deliver. Can these guys impress our management by delivering what they need required, and can he or she fit in our culture? right? I mean, if they join us, can they stay with us for long term?
Right.
Right? These are certain things the recruiters will have to start
We'll have to
thinking.
yes. Yeah.
Right? Whereas, I mean, we'll be slowly aligned towards what management is thinking. If,
Right.
if we are thinking in a totally different direction and management is thinking in a totally different direction, that's where the problem comes in. I mean, we might not be able to bring in the right candidate, right fit
Right.
within the organization. That would give us a very negative impact.
Right.
Right? That's the reason, I mean, I think we'll have to slowly get together.
Right.
Right. But for now, I don't think so. Recruiters are really thinking in those terms. But the mindset will have to switch.
Will have to
I mean,
change.
probably with all the technology coming in,
Right.
right? I mean,
Assisting
all the,
them.
Yeah, the mundane work is going off.
Then they
and
have
they'll
more
to
brain
start-
power to
yes,
apply towards the
They're
more.
not really engaged with the regular mundane activities.
That makes
They'll
sense.
have to start thinking little strategic.
Makes sense. So I want to also talk about the thing that you talked the beginning of this podcast where you said, all resumes are alike right now. Well, maybe resumes are dead. And what you need is this intelligence that you talked about, right?
Correct.
So we call it the interview intelligence. Basically addressing some of the things that you just mentioned. So I'm curious, like. Apart from the things that you just mentioned, are there other things as well that you would add to that list and say, hey, maybe this guy how likely is this guy to stick around? Are there other things that you would add to that list?
Yes, I mean when it comes to resumes are dead. I mean, if you look at some of the leading job boards, they started taking in video resumes into the system, right? Whereas the candidate directly speaks in front of a camera and they try to talk about themselves.
Right.
That trend has already started, right?
Right.
Whereas we are not just looking at a document, we're looking at a person talking about themselves.
Right.
That can also be scripted and that can also be spoken by the candidate keeping a paper in front of them. But then at least we are listening it out from a candidate's voice, right? I mean, that gives some sort of a confidence that, I mean, he just didn't copy and paste it, but he tried to represent himself and he tried to speak something which makes sense. From there to what we are looking at today, right? I mean, when it comes to the quality of the candidate, when it comes to whether he or she will fit in our culture, right? I mean, all of that will really play a major role. Right. Likewise, to answer your question about what are they really inclined towards, or will they really fit in our culture or organization? Yes, those will have to be. We'll have to start thinking about it. I mean, as I said, one is recruiter's mindset, one is the interviewer's mindset, and management mindset. How we are trying to represent ourselves on paper, right? What kind of a job description are we trying to paste in there? I mean, if you start talking about the same job description, obviously they copy and paste the job description in a chat GPT or somewhere and they prepare the right resume which exactly matches our job description. So instead of that, I mean, we should not talk more about what he or she will have to do. I mean, we'll have to talk more about what our culture is. Right, we'll have to start talking more about us than the roles and responsibilities. That's when people, these candidates will also start representing themselves in a different way. Right, what's happening now at the current situation is I'm talking more about the role, and candidate is learning about the role and they're trying to represent the same thing back to us. But what I would say is we'll have to start talking about the problem we have and about our organization, about our culture. That's when the candidate will definitely think about, will I fit in that kind of a culture? Can I solve that kind of a problem? That thinking will have to change, and there is no resume which can be built towards this. Right? I mean, only someone within our organization can represent all of that, but an outsider can never write the same thing about what I'm talking about, my problem, my culture and all of that, which can be represented in a resume. And that's how we can ensure that resumes are still dead and the real
candidates persona comes out.
Jobs. So that's something we'll have to start thinking about.
That's a very valid point. So I'm curious, like I'm going to transport you to maybe 5 years from now, in the future. And how do you see, 5 years from now, how do you see, or where do you see the experience is going to be like 5 years from now? What's going to be different from your perspective, given the advancements we're having right now, and how might that be applied to recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, we already started thinking in those terms. I mean, so I always am inclined towards technology and the kind of candidate experience we wanted to give. I mean, especially when you're hiring for call centers, I started thinking, I mean, the moment candidates walk into our office, I don't want my recruiter to face them. I wanted a small booth, like a telephone booth. They just get in there, scan a QR
That's very
code,
creative.
start taking the assessment, and then they boom. I mean, they're done, and that's when the alert will be triggered to the recruiter, and then they say you got a candidate who already got through the first level of screening, and that's when there are again interview rooms where the interviewer, I mean, the recruiter goes, sits with them, then talks about this is the role you'll have to work, and then from there, I mean, it's the whole process is automated. I mean, there's an application where the recruiter says, I spoke with the candidate and he seems to be more fit for this role, and an email or an alert goes to the interviewer, and panel says I'm available at this time, and then it goes back to the candidate and takes the candidate's availability, and it syncs both the timings, and it goes and books the slot, and an alert is already sent to both the candidate and the interviewer and the recruiter, and they all come on that bridge, and they speak, right? I mean, and from there, I mean, after whatever structure you defined before you opened up this job, right? I mean, 1, 2, 3 levels or 4 levels or whatever it is, it's all automated and pre-populated at each level. You're done with first level, then you go to the second level, and the same process is continued, like where the process is fully automated. Alerts are being sent,
Yeah.
inputs are being taken, interviews are happening, and they say yes, no, based on yes, you go here. The whole flow which we were talking all these days on a chart, right? Now it goes onto a system, and system is trying to automate all these processes and the resume. I mean, finally an offer is approved, an offer is went to offer goes to the candidate,
Right.
and the candidate accepts it, and again you have pre-boarding, which is already happening nowadays,
Right.
where he uploads all the documentation, and someone is validating the documents, and they say yes, I mean, the documents are all valid, and then the candidate comes on board. On day one, we welcome him on a screen, and that's again automated. I think that's where we're heading towards.
That's fantastic. I mean, I think all along the way you are collecting data, right?
Correct.
You're making sure that the interview
The
intelligence
process is seamless.
is seamless,
right? And there's no misses, and the experience is all great for the candidate, for the company, for the recruiter, everyone. Right? We are not missing out anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's something it would be after a couple of years, is what I feel.
That's I hope so too, and maybe sooner, given the advances we're having in AI, like every month changes.
Correct.
But the advances we're making. So I really hope that that by the time we get there, that we'll really have a very smooth process, like you are envisioning. And to be honest with you, that's something I believe in as well. That there is that especially the recruitment industry, like we talked at the beginning, is ripe for using more data throughout the process, and collecting that data throughout the process, and then using that to have very high quality candidates come through the funnel, so that you can ultimately not only meet the recruiters' KPIs, but also meet objectives of the company and the CEOs and the founders and senior leadership. So if there is, for example, one thing that you wanted, for example, a mid to senior level recruiter to know, what piece of advice would you give him or her?
No, I would say, I mean, I always, there are a couple of articles which I already wrote about. I mean, first is you'll have to be convinced to convince someone. That's the first thing. And you'll have to kind of learn more about your organization. You'll have to inculcate that culture within yourself. You should be able to explain what job each of these folks within your organization are doing, right? More relevant details than just reading out a job description. Than that, I mean, you understand more about what these developers, I mean, whom you're trying to hire, will really do on when they get on to work. Right? What kind of impact can they bring into the system? right? What kind of a product is it? What is that? How is it going to be helpful for the industry? I mean, if you get into those details and explain to the candidate, that's when the candidate is one way thinking that I'll be empowered here, right? I mean, and there's a lot I could do. I mean, I think that I'm doing some sort of a change. I'm bringing some value to this organization. So if you show him or her the kind of value proposition they're going to bring into our organization, that's when they'll get convinced and they'll start thinking, yeah, that's the kind of a place where I wanted to join, where I wanted to make some sort of an impact, and whereas my skills will be really utilized in this organization. That's the feeling the candidate will have to get when they start talking to you as a recruiter.
Right.
So for that, you'll have to start getting in there, right? I mean, you'll have to start learning more about what products, what kind of managers, what kind of a company is this, right? I mean, where they are working. Instead of just working on the regular monotonous process, they'll have to start thinking about what's really happening within our organization. So that really makes the change, and obviously that brings in the right candidates into the system.
What would you also say about embracing the future? Like you mentioned earlier about AI and how that is changing. You even talked earlier about, hey, think about what you can do beyond AI, because AI is going to eventually do some of the things that you're going to do.
Correct.
What would you say to them about, some of the recruiters might be actually truly be afraid of like their job prospects in the future, and what would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, think beyond AI. I mean, so like if you look at AI at this point of time, I mean, yeah, we are moving into agentic. I mean, where a recruiter will have to obviously train that particular agent to behave like yourself, right? So when you're trying to train, I mean, there is a limitation, right? To some extent, you can train, but there will be some realistic problems, situational judgment, which you'll have to do. I mean, whereas the candidate will not ask the same question. All the candidates will not ask the same question. I mean, right? I mean, they are dynamic, right? I mean, every candidate is not the same. That's something we'll have to start learning. I mean, how do I convince this candidate? I mean, he is a top-notch candidate. He's coming from a very big company. Can I really convince him to join our small companies like 500 headcount, where he's coming from a 50,000 headcount company, right? That's something recruiters will have to start thinking, and that really brings in a big impact, right? I mean, until unless recruiters start thinking, I mean, how do I convince this candidate? What is something I'll have to tell to this candidate for him to come and join my organization? What kind of a CTC can we offer? Can our management really offer that kind of a CTC? Or how do I sell this candidate to our management? Right? Recruitment is not just about you sourcing a candidate, right? I mean, after sourcing a candidate, you'll have to convince your management and ensure, I mean, it's like you're trying to act as a bridge between the candidate and the management. Right? I mean, that can't so easily do it. Right? I mean, that's how you should become a salesperson, marketing person, all of that. I mean, there are a lot of aspects which you'll have to build within yourself. That's when you will be able to be a successful recruiter in the era of AI.
Correct. That makes sense. One last question. What excites you as we move into the future? And we talked about several things. If we were to summarize, what some of the things we talked about, like what excites you the most in everything we discussed?
I would say, I mean, data driving us towards the future, right? I mean, that's the whole motive. I mean, so from what, as an experienced professional, I can always say, yeah, I can get this candidate, I can do this, I can do that, but how can I do it? That's where data is going to help us a lot, and that's something which will drive us into the future, using AI into our regular processes, where it will solve a lot of problems, and we getting matured enough to get in there and leverage the technology and deliver the best efforts for the sake of delivering the right business to our customers. Right? I mean, from starting from gut feel, you will have to slowly get inclined towards looking into the data points and trying to be smart enough using AI, and then AI helping you drive your success in bringing in the right candidates to deliver your business in a much better way. Like the quality kept increasing. If you look at the expectations of the customers, they kept changing, right? I mean, so obviously now AI coming into picture. I mean, everyone can go ahead and Google, and that gives an output. And obviously, customer doesn't want that kind of an output. They want something much better than what AI can do. So for that, I think, I mean, we'll have to really leverage the technology part, and we'll have to learn a lot of things,
Unlearn a lot of things, yeah.
things, and start learning how we can mature ourselves using this technology, right? And that really makes a lot of sense in terms of this world, which is going to be a little challenging for us, right? I mean, you should stop doing the same monotonous work and start thinking more strategic, right? I mean, what impact can I create at every point, at every decision I'm going to take? That's something which would change the world.
That makes sense. I think one key thing that to me is really what you said at the beginning of this podcast, that look, all resumes are alike now.
Correct.
So there is nothing I can get out of a resume these days, and I have to rely on data from now on. I mean, I can't just look at a resume and decide whether this guy is good or bad. You have to go much more deeper. And you said earlier that even videos can be things that people can fake, and you can create
they can read a document, and then they can speak very well in front of the video, but
exactly
those you're not questioning them. It's just about they talking about themselves.
Exactly. So I think that I really liked the way you started with that the resumes are dead, and that we have to rely on much more data driven process. And I think recruiters have to embrace that. That they have to embrace that future, because that future is now.
Yes.
Like that future is not too far away. Like the future is actually happening right now in front of our eyes.
Correct.
And we miss that that opportunity. Then you as a recruiter, you will be irrelevant. They need to embrace that, and they need to sort of be able to work alongside the technology tools that are going to come out, and hopefully use that way to go from where they are right now, more of a gut feel based recruiting, to a much more data driven hiring. Well, this is a very insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Giri Prasad Reddy. We loved having so many insightful conversations in this.
Great questions, I would say.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We'll be back with another podcast in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.